Welcome to the Herpcore History podcast, presented to you by Little Shop of Horrors. Feel free to reach out to us on any of our social media platforms for any of your feeder needs. All right, let's go ahead and get into this episode. All right, tonight I'm lucky enough to be joined by Nick Mutton. He's joining me tonight to speak. How's it going, man? How you doing?
Good, real good.
Good, excellent. I'm not going to even try to hide that we were having awesome conversations before we started doing this, but I want to make sure we get down your history and talking to you about you, and
I've done
our best.
I've done a lot of podcasts. You always seem like you have these great conversations before and after the record button gets hit, like after it stops, so that it keeps going.
Yes. That is only 100%. I was just literally saying that today, going, it's so cool that these people even agree to talk to me. And then the whole conversation's cool. But as soon as I'm like, okay, I'm done, and we talk for another hour, and it's holy crap, this is so cool. I wish we would have got this, but it's fair enough. They don't want to talk about it publicly, and that's some of the things, and that's cool. That's fine. Very good. Okay, well, where'd you grow up?
Mostly where I am. I'm one of those people. I've bounced all over the world, it seems, but I always end up back here. Which is a town called Spokane in eastern Washington state. I was originally born in Hawaii. My father is like the luckiest guy ever. He literally joined the Navy during the Vietnam War. He volunteered for the Navy during the Vietnam War, expecting to get sent over to Vietnam, and somehow managed to get shore duty as a radio operator in Honolulu, Hawaii for the entire 5 years that he was in during the Vietnam War. So I was born at a military hospital in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. It's like, so yeah, that moved back to Spokane, where my parents were originally from, when I was, I think, 5 or 6, and then grew up here. And though I bounced all over the place, I always end up back here. So this is definitely my hometown.
Gotcha. I can relate with that. I feel that. And so then when did your interest in reptiles start, and what was that like for you?
Some of my earliest memories, like literally, it must have just been baked in from the beginning. I remember, your memories get, when you reach way, way back, your memories of your very earliest childhood do get a little murkier, especially when you get to be old and geriatric like me. But I can remember being in the first grade, and for up through the first grade, I went through like a private school, and it was kind of out in the woods. And there are all kinds of creepy, crawly things. And you get lunch recess, and I would just go out there and, you drink your little carton of milk at your lunch, and then you're like, it was empty, and I just take that with me, and I go catching bugs and whatever. I remember first snake I ever had was a gopher snake that I caught at lunch, and stuck it in a little baby gopher snake and stuffed it in a little tiny milk carton. I gave my teachers fits. I'd bring back black widow spiders. I knew they were black widow spiders. Even at that age, I knew what they were. But I'd catch black widow spiders carefully, and just always catching that kind of stuff. I caught some blue-tailed skinks, but I kept the snake for a minute. That was, and it just kind of never, and I guess I was lucky in that my father in particular, and my mother was more passive about it. My dad kind of encouraged it. I would always, even as a young child, I would have a series of, had some anoles and some Haitian curly-tailed lizards at one point, and some American bullfrogs that I ended up with, just at some point, little, fire-bellied toads. And I had a whole range of stuff, even when I was a pretty young child, clear through into elementary school and stuff. I remember went out and caught a red-eared slider. I went out and caught this thing in this pond, and it laid eggs. It's like I did, obviously I didn't hatch them. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was like, but yeah, no, it's been since my earliest childhood, it's always been an interest.
Gotcha. Is that it sounds like your parents encouraged it, your father. That's super cool. And so you were keeping stuff early on.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing or anything.
Yeah.
It didn't always go well, but I was definitely interested in that stuff and definitely trying.
Yes, yeah. And so how old were you around that time frame when, it sounds like it was just from the beginning and it was encouraged. So was it from that early on stage that you had these animals?
Yeah, kindergarten, first grade, and on up. But I was always a nerdy kid, so Yeah, I always read a lot of books and stuff, and like I was always kind of a little bit more intellectual than my peers, which isn't saying much if you're talking about second graders. But my interest in more scientific topics and biology and that was outside of the norm, I guess. So I pursued those interests from a very, very early age.
Very cool, very cool. And getting to see, I mean, so when you got your red-eared slider and you had eggs lay, what, even though it didn't end up being fruitful, what was that like for you as a kid?
Well, keep in mind, I was a younger kid, and so I've got this way too big of a red-eared slider in this fish tank, and it doesn't have any dirt in which to lay an egg because that didn't even occur to me. Like it's got like a some bricks and things it can haul out of the water, but it just laid them in the water because there was no soil to bury them in at all. I'm like, what are these things floating around in here? It's like, and you could about imagine like a 8-year-old or 9-year-old how clean the turtle tank water was on average. It's like this is not like I said, this is not. Eventually, it stunk, and my mom made me let the turtle go. So I literally was taken back to the same pond where the turtle was caught, and released the turtle, which I probably should never have, you know, have taken in the first place. But all those things kind of it just fostered your interest, and it grows and grows over time. And then at some point, there was that you're very a young adult, and you've just now sort of stepped out on your own, and I drove down a street that I weirdly like live like just right around the corner from this place now. There used to be a local pet shop, and they had a big sign up front that was like on special, like baby green iguanas were like $15. This was a long time ago. And then just a light bulb in my head went off like, oh shit, I can have any crazy pet I want now. And so I got an iguana, which turned into 5 iguanas, which turned into increasingly less common species of iguanas. And then it just kind of started snowballing, and I was hooked.
All right, all right. And did you get into trying to propagate iguanas, or was that something that?
No, earliest it was like, the postage stamp collection, knowing to keep these things. I had several green iguanas, and then I got some spiny tailed iguanas, and then you got some of the like club tailed iguanas and some of that stuff. Uh, but it was mainly just, had some couple really big cages and multiple iguanas in a cage, and I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, in retrospect, it's easy to look back now after doing this for this long, and you look back to what you did when you were a kid, basically. And you know, I kept things alive pretty well back in those earliest days, but I wasn't, I wasn't knowledgeable enough to propagate anything. That kind of came later, and
Yeah,
even that was a learning curve to kind of get to that point. It was a very sort of progression of things to get to that point for me.
yeah, for sure. And at that point, I mean, where were you pulling knowledge from? What was the pet shop like that you were going into? Was it
Uh,
were all these animals acquired from that pet shop, or was it?
it got to a point where, like, by that point, I actually had my own car, and I'm driving around. There's multiple pet shops around, and so you kind of make the rounds and get your feeders or whatever, and see what if they got anything new in. And back in those days, this is before like everybody was on the internet. This was before the internet, so there was like, what, reptiles on the internet? Like there wasn't even a thing. Um, and yeah, one of my best friends in the whole world is a guy named Ryan Young, who's a very well-known python breeder. We're probably the only two guys in the Northwest that breed pythons for a living. And I've known him since the 90s. He's a couple years younger than me. And he worked at one of the local pet shops. And so I would go get there and get crickets sometimes from him. He's the guy selling crickets. And now we're gray-haired old men who breed pythons for a living. And I still go on vacation and go herping with them and stuff now. But you make these some of these lifelong friendships and stuff. So yeah, no, it's
And
yeah,
so
man,
early
it
on, when
makes me
you
think
had
about
those,
those days.
yeah, no, it's super. It's crazy the little turns that if you were to turn left that day instead of right, and where it leads you
That is
throughout
so.
time.
I think people don't really realize just how random life is.
Yes.
Like there, every day you make decisions that don't seem like anything that radically alter the entire trajectory of your life, and you don't even realize it. It's like, I went to I was into reptiles by this point. I was fairly well hooked. I didn't have a lot of pythons or anything like that. I, with some other friends, we drove from where I'm at all the way to the San Diego Reptile Show, which at the time that was the biggest show on the West Coast, uh, in the late '90s. And we drove all the way down, which is like 26 hours driving time each way. So it's a substantial effort to get down there in a car. And I was, kind of a blank slate. I wanted to get I was interested in short tail pythons and carpet pythons. And I spent a long time at that first show talking to Chad Brown about some Borneo short tail pythons. But then it was down to where I got the Borneo short tail pythons from Chad, or whether I got these carpet pythons from this other guy. And I ended up getting the carpet pythons. But that single moment has dictated my entire life, has played out based on that moment of what snake to buy at the San Diego Reptile Show, because that started my interest in carpet pythons. Then now I'm like writing books about carpet pythons. I have the biggest collection of them anywhere, and all this stuff happened because of one moment where I could have flipped a coin, whether which way I went. And I don't know what my life would have been like had I gotten into short tail pythons of all things. But I mean, I know what happened when I went down this rabbit hole of Australian species, and it played out as it did. But these watershed moments happen all the time, and we rarely recognize it at the time. I was just some dingling newbie herper thinking, oh, might be cool to get a carpet python, not knowing that it was going to radically alter the entire trajectory of my life.
Yeah. Well, and that, I mean, it from even just in our short talk of where we're at now, when you think about how you brought up your dad being the luckiest guy.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for a decision in a system that we have no concept of how it was determined in this lottery for your dad to be where he was and another position, and then to be the type of person that was supportive of your hobby.
Yeah. And this is the randomness of life. Like my father, it was before we were talking about this before we started recording and everything. My father volunteered for the Navy during Vietnam, and somehow magically ended up on shore duty as a radio operator in Hawaii the entire time. So I was born in Hawaii. Well, this is that was just, he volunteered with a certain expectation, probably going to Vietnam. And some bureaucrat pencil pusher on a desk just sent him over here instead. And never gave it a moment's thought. Well, we needed somebody to do this, and it just happened to be him. And so we happened to go there, and I happened to be born in that place. And this is just, and my entire life, it's one guy at a desk's decision to send this guy to Vietnam or to Hawaii is why I exist at all, and why I breed pythons now. It's like all this stuff is, and that's just how all of life is like that. It's mostly just random chance.
Yes. Yeah. And it goes on and on, but to keep on track. And so early on with those, so you're linking up, you're going to these different pet shops, you have your own car, you're meeting your friend, Ryan Young. What are your influences before that where you're finding the interest in these animals? Because you're someone that you're seeking knowledge, you're going out there. I'm sure you weren't just sat idly by. Where were you pulling information from?
Books. A lot of people, I've been involved in the reptile community for nearly 40 years now, most of my entire adult life, for sure, in my early 50s now. And what I've learned is that most people in the hobby usually had like a mentor figure, someone that got them into it and everything, and that kind of showed them the ropes and all that. And one bad thing about where I live is there's not ever really been a really robust reptile sort of community. No local herp society, nothing like that. So I never really had that traditional sort of mentor in the reptile hobby or anything like that as an influence. I just had this interest, and for me, my mentor was effectively books, and I consumed all the books I could. And some of those books are just hugely important to me and my development as a keeper, and then fostering my interest, and they fulfilled that need to have for inspiration that normally might have been another human. I can think of a few books just right off that were hugely important to me, and that I would credit anything that I have accomplished in the reptile hobby, any book that I have written in the reptile hobby, and I'm working on number 4 now. It's in large measure only possible because of the books that I read that inspired me and formed my opinions and my writing style, my approach to how I do what I do. That I didn't invent anything. And I think of like Ross and Marchek's 1993 classic, The Reproductive Husbandry of Boas and Pythons, a big blue book. That book is probably one of the most important reptile books that was ever written, in its scope, its scale, and what it aspired to try to do. And whether it was successful or not doesn't really matter. It attempted to compile all the reproductive data available for every single species of boa and python on the planet in one volume. A lot of the information is inaccurate, out of date, incomplete, or missing. But for 1993, it is inspirational. I mean, I remember thumbing through the pages of that book and just looking at these images of all these things, and it just captured my imagination. It made me want to learn more and wanted to keep more, and it really fueled me. Um, I still have 3 copies of that book now. I actually found recently a hardcover copy that was in perfect condition. It's like, I'm like, I'll never even open it. I've never opened it. It just sits there protected. I have a passable paperback copy, and then I have the copy I'll actually look at once in a while that is just beat to a pulp. It's held together with packing tape. I have gone this water damaged. I have had this book. I've had this since probably 1996. I've had it for probably 30 years, and it looks like it's been, rode hard and put away wet, quite literally. But that book so inspired me. And then also, in that same year, Dave and Tracy Barker, living legends themselves, put out the Pythons of the World, Volume 1, Australia. And that book as well just set this ridiculously high standard for photographic quality and the quality of the information. The information in it is fairly limited, but at the time it was written, it was the most comprehensive thing that could possibly be written. We know more now because we've had 3 more decades to learn more. But it's another landmark book that was just really, and that one might even be more inspirational to me. I don't know if anybody, I guess I don't know what people listening to this might be their awareness of who I am and what I've been a party to or what have you, but I have written a few books on carpet pythons, or co-written a few books on carpet pythons and the Antaresia genus, and finishing up one on the Aspidites genus now. And if you look at the writing style, that my writing style now, it is very much inspired by Dave and Tracy's book, which is sort of this blending of, it's this quasi academic writing style where it's like it's not really an academic paper like going through peer review, but it's sort of like that. And that there's citations to academic works embedded in the body of what you're talking about. It's very much written in that very science minded, very serious way. And I tend to emulate that because that was so important to me and so inspirational to me that's the standard. That's where the bar is for me, is that. And I think it's a high bar. So I want to continue that tradition.
Yeah. No, and that's beautiful, and that's a great way to think about it. And I mean, both are equally important in your journey, right? Where if it wasn't for the stepping stone of one to then to water that plant, that knowledge that you were trying to grow, to then step into the next thing, and then for there to be people so early on thinking about it. And what's so interesting is we live in a time and age where information is so readily available, right? I'm just a nobody that's hitting up all these people and go, hey, talk to me about this, and this is what I'm doing. But there's no credit to, I'm a nobody. And that's the problem with the internet and what it's created, is that anybody can put out hey, this is how you take care of this. This is how you do this. But in the past, when there's a barrier to entry with publishing a book, the information that was available while you had to seek it out was going to be a pure form of information.
Yeah. Now we have a weird, it's entirely predictable and shouldn't be surprising at all, but there's kind of a paradox, an information paradox, in the sense that more information is available to you than anybody has ever had available to them in all of human history. Basically, anything that a human being has ever known, ever in all of human history, you can instantly pull up from your smartphone in your pocket right now from anywhere on the planet. And that's crazy. But it also means we have like exponentially more misinformation and garbage that is just not, so there is no filter. If you wrote anybody could write anything on the internet, whether it's true or not, doesn't make any difference. They can do it. If you had to publish a book, a publisher would have to look at that, and there'd be some scrutiny as to whether or not you knew what you were talking about.
Yes.
So that filter ensured that the integrity of the information was probably on average going to be better. Not that mistakes weren't made and bad books weren't written, because they certainly were, but there was at least something. Now it's like people just get on the internet and say whatever nonsense. Also, there's that paradox continues just within the internet stuff, and that now people rarely want to read a book. They're very entitled, and that they expect the information to be spoon-fed to them. They think, I will just ask this question on the internet and the whole world will take time out of their day to spoon feed me the information, and I won't have to do anything. And when they do that, what they don't almost never seem to realize is that the person that is most likely to respond to their question is almost always the least equipped to answer it correctly. And the person that is the most equipped to answer that question is the least likely to answer that question. I am the least likely to answer the question because I have a lot of, well, think about it. Like if you say
100%, 100%.
How do you incubate your carpet python eggs, we'll say, and everything. And then there'll be some dude that just jumps right in there immediately. The first 3 people, they invariably will be the people with the least experience at all, because they got 3 snakes and maybe they had a clutch of eggs one time. They have little experience. They have very little, but what they do is they have a lot of free time to answer questions and act like the world's expert on all things. Whereas somebody like me that has hatched probably 7,000 or 8,000 carpet python eggs, I am too busy dealing with a giant collection of animals that I produce every year to answer stupid questions. Like that is an easy question. I don't have time to answer everybody's question. So I will just, at this point, I mean, maybe this sounds terrible, but I won't answer somebody's question unless it's an interesting question. Once in a while, I'll stumble onto somebody asking a question that, like, I know nobody is going to answer this question the correct way, so I will answer that question. If it's something stupid you could have Googled, I'm not going to waste my time, because you could have just Googled it. I'm not going to waste my time answering it. It's like, if your question is, how big will my snake get? It's like, I could take a half an hour, explain to you that there's no such thing as maximum size in snakes, and explain the concept of indeterminate growth, and how there is no magical point at which any reptile stops growing at all. And if you overfeed it, it'll achieve an unnaturally large size and die young. I've used to try that, but then what happened, I'd give them this long, very accurate answer, try to give some people some knowledge, and then it'd be like, you get some response like, I just want to know how big it'll get. Like they just in one ear and out the other. It did not register at all. It's like I can't do it. Like it's
the unfortunate reality of humans is not everybody's meant to be awake, and the person being asleep is their mental capacity.
I tend to get on like a kick for a while where I'll pick a single topic or two and I'll just harp on it, because I do a lot of podcasts, and I'm like, I'll just start beating this into people's consciousness and see if I can move the needle. And it turns out, even as a single individual, you can. I can think of a couple instances where if I just bang on the drum for like 3 years, constantly repeating something, eventually people get it in their head that, you can, but it takes a lot of persistence. But generally people, it's very frustrating. I'm like,
it's an uphill battle. You're pushing a stone, and so
how big will this get? It's like, there's no such thing. Like, it doesn't matter. How big will it get? Like,
or just an answer to a
there is no answer to this question. Like, how much you're going to feed it, that's what's going to make the difference. It's going to get to sexual maturity at a certain size, and then it'll keep growing past that point at a slower rate. But if you keep hammering with food, it will achieve a ridiculous size, and it will die very young as a result of that. Death is the only limit to size. Curiously, in humans, same thing, but it only applies to our noses and our earlobes. Go figure. Humans, we are genetically limited. If you keep eating, you gotta get fatter, you won't get taller. But your earlobes and your nose have indeterminate growth. But it's only part of us that's like that. Snakes' whole bodies are like that. Which is why when you see some super old dudes, they all look like Walter Matthau. Remember Walter Matthau? Big ass, bulbous nose and big ears. Because your ears and your nose just keep growing your whole life super slowly. But if you live a long time, you end up with a big ass nose and big ears.
Well, and so And so you having this wealth of knowledge, and it obviously shaping kind of who you were, and that you were going into these situations with an educated um opinion and thought of what you were looking for, going, hey, I'm looking for bloods, or I'm looking for carpet pythons here at this point. What I assume you had experiences before. Obviously, you say you went with a group of people and you were connecting with people. Where was it like in your life where you walked in and it was kind of a whoa? This is what the hobby can be. This is what is around me. Does that make sense?
Oh, I think some of those moments, that those realizations sort of sink in over time. That same trip to when I went to and got my first carpet python, and actually went to like this enormous reptile expo in San Diego, which was huge at the time. And it was a long trip to get there, but like just to being around, like literally, there's like 1,000 people in this room, and they're all here looking at reptiles, buying reptiles. And this was well before the ball python thing took over, and there was so the diversity of species that people had was much greater. North American colubrids were a much bigger thing than they are now. That largely getting supplanted by the ball python thing. So there's the amount of like crazy species and all these colorful colubrid snakes and lizards, and there's just so much stuff. There was no one species that was super dominant. It was just a bunch of everything, and it was just wow. I mean, it's like, I saw an adult black-headed python someone was selling for $3,000, and there were some guys talking about how that was such a super good deal for this adult male black-headed python, and here we are 30 years later, and it would still be a good deal now in 2026 for the same thing. It's like wow. It's like it's just all this stuff I'd never seen with my own eyes in person before, and it was really really eye opening, and it just really um, pushed me harder. That's another thing. I think a lot of the success that I have had, if I'm being totally honest, I don't even think I'm particularly good at breeding snakes. Um, Other people might argue that. I don't think that statistically I'm the best snake. I know I'm not the best. I'm probably not even I'm probably now better than average at breeding snakes, honestly, even though I've done this for a living for 20 years. Now, I think that the success I've had, a huge factor in that is that most people who've been in the reptile hobby for a long time have gotten out of the reptile hobby at some point. People are in the hobby for 5 or 8 or even 10 years, and they get out of it, and like 10 years go by and they get a few snakes again. Most people get into the hobby at some point and then get out of the hobby at some point. And maybe they get back into the hobby again at some later point, and maybe they don't. I think the fundamental difference with me, and it's probably the single biggest reason I've been successful, is that I never once did that. I just kept grinding. I think most people, if they were breeding a little of this or that, and then instead of getting out of the hobby after 8 years of doing that, they just kept going, incrementally building their collection, building their facility, and just incrementally adding to it and getting better and better over time, and doing things at a bigger scale over a long period of time. If they got to the point of been doing this for 30 plus years, they'd be where I'm at. I just think it's a participation trophy. I just didn't stop. So eventually you get somewhere at the far end of things, not because I'm super talented or super skilled at doing my job. I just never stopped doing my job. And so you just every year builds on what you did the year before. And eventually, if you never take a 10-year hiatus, you can get pretty far. I think
Yeah.
I think it's just it. I have friends that I know, I won't name them for fear of stroking their egos, but I have a few friends I know that these guys are way better at breeding snakes than me. I have no doubt at all in my mind. They're better at getting snake, being more in tune, more in touch with things, and better at breeding snakes than I am. I am further down along career wise than they are, but I think it's just purely a participation trophy. I've just stuck it out for a long time. But it's not, I don't think it's necessarily all about talent or anything like that. I think persistence is a huge thing.
Well, I think that's an interesting thing to think about and conceptualize, because the the way is something that I bring up that sooner or later the two people that listen to this podcast are going to get annoyed about is is the idea that of keeping reptiles almost being a form of art, where you as an individual have a vision of some just uh, just a bias to the animals you're producing and what you're picking. And there's going to be a lineage of animals that were in some vision of what you thought, where you decided to make the pairing for this or that, right? Even if it is random, the fact that those animals are living is because of you. So there will be some echo of the decisions that you made. And the art behind it and the beauty behind it is the fact that our lives are finite. So while yes, you want to equate it to a participation trophy, and okay, it is, but the badass part about it and the really cool part is that just like myself, you have a finite time here and you have dedicated it to the species you find interest in or the species or whatever, however you want to break it down. And that is the, yeah, maybe people are more naturally talented than they see this thing and they do it that way, or where they live plays a factor in it, or all these mini little things that could equate for why, you say what you say about what they do. But the finiteness and that you choose to do it is what's admirable
Yeah,
about it.
I I've had, because within the sort of like Australian python breeding community, such as it is, I've kind of, I guess, achieved that sort of like a certain status in that community, just because I've been around for so long and breed so much of all these species. Um, that you sometimes you will draw the ire of people because you've been successful where they maybe have not been as successful, and you kind of get the hate you because they ain't you kind of vibe, or because you have the thing they think they should have, you have the collection they think they should have, you produce the thing they think they should produce, you wrote the book they think they should have written, this kind of stuff. And it's, I don't know, man. I'm getting all philosophical on this, but it's weird to get to the point where I'm at, I guess. And I look back and I'm thinking like, I didn't do anything special. I just kept going. I just kept going one step further over a long period of time. And I've not ever done anything that any of these people, the naysayers and the haters and whatnot, I've never done anything that they could not do. I did the things they did not do, not things they couldn't do, not things that they still can't do. Like anybody else could have done what I did, and anybody else could still do everything I've already done. They could start right now and probably pass me. It's not like this is not, you don't have to sit around and wait for to be sort of ordained to do things. You can just do the things you're interested in. It's like it's pretty awesome. This is the best hobby anybody could ever have. And
Yeah.
it's a hobby that's kind of an expensive hobby, but it's a hobby that easily pays for itself if you're even remotely competent at it. It's really easy. The math is really, really good. It's like it's not, I don't understand the, I think maybe some of that is probably just human nature, is to be sort of political. I mean, I don't mean
Well,
that
yeah, but
political in like a politics sort of sense, but the politicking goes on between any individuals or groups of individuals in the broadest possible terms. We tend to find little tribal identities and little cliques, and we tend to be like that. And even if it doesn't serve us well always to be like that, but I think it's kind of baked into humanity on
yeah,
some
well, and
level.
it's not always inherently a bad thing. I think something that's very interesting. I don't keep carpet pythons. I never have. I think they're cool, but just personally, I don't have a lot of interest in them. It's just not for me. But very cool animals, and I can appreciate someone else's passion. But the carpet community has gone out there through the different platforms and been one that has been a bastion for information for a very long time in a public manner. And it's a weird one as someone that's got to go to things like Texas Carpet Fest and hang out with all those guys and get to meet those people.
Like,
And I don't keep what they keep,
no,
but I feel as comfortable there as I do anywhere else. And it's this really weird community of people that you don't see as much in the hobby, where there's that connection there. And that's super cool. And I think unique to that species.
I think that one of the single biggest things of that, I got to give credit to Eric Burke, who's an old friend of mine. I just talked to him today, who started the Morelia Python Radio podcast 15 years ago or whatever. I had met Eric. I had sold him a bunch of snakes when he was first getting in the hobby, and kind of helped him out with some stuff. And I kept telling him, I remember, like I said, you got to find a way to distinguish yourself from what everybody else is doing. Find your niche in the hobby. And then he came with this idea to do a carpet python focused podcast. And I remember just thinking, that's never going to work. I was a totally naysayer. Like, that's so narrowly focused. How are you going to do that? Like, and boy, did he prove me wrong, man. All these years later, it's been this long, but what did he do? Did he create the world's greatest podcast? Probably not. I don't know what the world's greatest podcast is, but he consistently kept grinding away. And then
Yes.
now there's like 1,000 episodes, been on forever. It's like but it's consistently. He shows up every time and puts it out. And that consistency, that reliability, it becomes, you build that audience over time. It wasn't like built in a day. It was like built over a long period of time, just persistently grinding away. And then now it's this whole thing. And that's kind of you know, I think he's been pretty influential. I mean, everybody knows that podcast who's in my little world, the Australian Python stuff, and everybody, it is. I think the carpet pythons in general, that group is like a perfect size market, if you will, in that it is like not so big and diffused that not everybody. It's like it's small enough, it's big enough to support itself. It's small enough to where anybody doing anything of much serious consequence probably knows everybody. So it can be close knit. It's big enough, but not too big. It's kind of that perfect medium size sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's rare that there's somebody doing anything of any significance or scale with carpet pythons that I've not crossed paths with at some point or other. It is kind of a little more close knit than I think some other subsets of the hobby are.
It's a very cool tribe of the hobby, and to look at it and to enjoy it and get
to the point that you brought up about selective breeding, and you just kind of inadvertently will steer things. You see that with even look at like North American colubrids. When was the last time you saw an ugly California king snake baby for sale? You don't really, do you? It's like they're all they only come in one variety now, and it's awesome. It's like they're all like,
yeah.
Every black and white cow king baby I've ever seen for sale looked like the best black and white cow king baby you would ever find out in the wild ever. They're just all awesome, because the ones that weren't awesome got selected out of the gene pool. We just refined this. Now they're just all this awesome black and white or whatever phase. It's like and the carpet pythons have kind of are a bit like that as well. I think I worry that it's gone too far though, and now I'm kind of like trying to reverse engineer ugly brown carpet pythons, which is a weird thing to say.
I mean, you always want what you don't have, right? And so human nature again.
I've been to Australia a bunch of times. I've found these things in the wild. You know what you're never going to find in the wild? A fluorescent yellow and jet black carpet python. You're never going to find that. You will find a dingy golden black carpet python. You will find a yellow, black, and brown carpet python. The most common phenotype in a wild jungle carpet is actually black, yellowish gold, and brown. So you have like your yellowy gold bands that are edged in black, and then the black background fades like brown in between. It's a 3-colored snake instead of a 2-colored snake. That's the most common, and we actually had those in the early days in the hobby, and they're completely extinct. Because we kept selecting for yellow and black, yellow and black, yellow and black. The only thing that matters is yellow and black. So now the natural phenotype is lost. I have a few like locality jungles that show a little bit of that. I'm trying to selectively breed to bring back brown, which most people are like, what? I want to make bright yellow and black jungles that have brown interspacing that have a third color, because I think it'd be cool.
Yeah.
And you know what? Given enough time, it will totally work, because there's a lot of, I guess, what you deem phenotypic plasticity would be the technical term, in how they look. I have black and white jungle carpets, which are as white as a sheet of parchment paper. They are way more white than an axanthic. They are literally white. They are selectively bred piebald jungle carpets. Piebald is just zero pigment. And since there is no such thing as white pigment, these black and white jungles, and same with the black and white cow king, they're just unpigmented. The areas that are white are devoid of any pigment. That's why they're white. So it's not selectively breeding for more yellow. You're selectively breeding for nothing at all, which is kind of a weird thing to do. But after I started that breeding project with animals that hatched in 1994, So I'm now at 33 years, 32 years, 32 years of selective breeding. And they're as white as a sheet of printer paper, black and white. And that's just purely selectively breeding over that relatively short, in terms of biology window of time of just 3 decades. You can do anything with selective breeding if you put your mind to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just have to pick a single metric. You can't simultaneously breed for white instead of yellow, but also striping or also good temperament. You pick a single thing and that's where you're going, because you can't breed for two things at the same time. You'll end up pulling, you won't get anywhere. And if you're serious, I got to that point because I didn't hold back. Like in the couple of the early generations, you hold back a couple of babies, and then after a while you realize you're not getting anywhere, because the odds of you holding back the ones that are ultimately the best ones is really low. So then it just became, I hold back the entire clutch and raise the whole clutch to adults and see who's the best. And then you do repeat and raise the whole clutch for years and generations of doing that. And eventually you end up with something completely unique. I get the greatest sense of satisfaction out of those sorts of projects. Morphs are fine, I guess, but they're kind of lazy. It's like, oh, look, it's one step done. Like, just to say it's easy. It's like, and that's why people are drawn to it, because it's easy. If you want to get all the yellow off your jungle carpet, well, an axanthic gene would do that in one gene in one generation, potentially. Or you could selectively do it by selective breeding and take 30 years. So it's like, but I can look back at that was the thing I actually, I got that across the finish line, and they're way better looking than an axanthic jungle would be anyway. But I think that the things that are most rewarding in life, and certainly in the reptile hobby, are the things you had to work for. If you didn't have to work for it, it's just whatever. It's like, well, it's cool, but it doesn't feel earned. It's not much of an accomplishment. You bred some morph. Well, whoop-de-frickin' do. Like, it's like anybody could do that. It's like, you stuck with it for 30 years. Like, well, that's something, because most people wouldn't do that. So I find those longer term things the most rewarding in the hobby.
For sure. No, and that's, I mean, to the young people that aspire to be, in your position one day in their life, I think that's the most valuable thing they could take. I mean, a lot of value from your takes and how you think about stuff, not to downplay your overall thought, but that in particular is how you build longevity in the hobby, is focus on what you're doing and commit to it and prove it out over time.
I think like people get the wrong idea, and social media is the worst for promoting this. If you want to be successful at the reptile hobby, breeding stuff, what have you, or any other aspect of your life, you have to find your own niche. You have to do what you are personally interested in, what you are personally passionate about. The number of people in the reptile hobby that spend all their time and all their blood and sweat and tears and treasure chasing after some stupid project that somebody else told them was going to be the next big thing, instead of pursuing what they themselves actually are interested in. Could you imagine how much richer and more depth there would be in the reptile hobby if everybody pursued whatever they were personally actually interested in, instead of chasing after whatever the fads and trends and whatever the next big thing is and all of this stuff? If they just found what they were personally interested in, you'd have a vastly better hobby with a lot more stuff in it. Instead of chasing too many people, the majority of them, I think that, well, it's obvious, they're chasing after, they're not trying to produce and work with what they are personally the most interested in. They're trying to work with what they think other people want to buy. And there's I'm old enough, I'm probably older than you, but there's an old bumper sticker from like the 1970s that says, if you're not the lead dog, it's just like some sled dogs. And it's like, you're not the lead dog, the view never changes. That sums it all up. Because if you're not the lead dog, sled dog, you're just looking at the ass of the dog in front of you. That's all you're never going to get there. No one ever got to the pinnacle of any mountain by following somebody else. Nobody ever achieved financial independence or any great success in business by doing what everybody else did, working for somebody else. People that achieved the highest level of success started their own thing, did their own thing, found a niche that was not being utilized or not being serviced and provided that. They follow what they wanted to do, and that's how you get successful. It's not just jumping on the bandwagon like everybody else. That never works. And why do people not ever? It's also not the road to happiness either. It's like, I'm just doing this because I think other people, I'm just making these whatever because I think other people are going to want to buy them. And that's like, just do what you're actually interested in. Have you bought snakes from people? No doubt, right? Most of us have, or reptiles. And
Very limited, but yes, sir.
when you call somebody up and they have a whatever animal, doesn't even matter, fill in the blanks, whatever you want, um and you talk to them, if it's a project that they are personally really interested in and really passionate about, you can totally tell in the conversation
Yeah,
their
that sells
their
animals.
passion and their interest and their excitement about this project, whatever it is. You can hear it in their voice, you can sense it, and it's addictive. It's like, fuck, that sounds awesome. I want to feel like that too. I need to get this. You just, because it's genuine, it's real. And it's also the inverse of that is equally true. If they're just going through the motions, you can totally pick up on that too. It's like, just pursue what you're personally interested in. You will be much happier in this hobby if you do that, and you'll be more successful ultimately. You're doing what
Yep.
you want to do. It doesn't matter what something's worth. It doesn't matter
Well,
what other people say. It's like, do you like it? Are you interested in it? Then that's what you should pursue.
100%, 100%. And but that, that's something that comes with time, right? And maturity in the person. And some people are going to find joy and it's different type of people too, right? Where I can 100% relate with what you're saying. I can only conceptualize that there is obviously there's another set of person that finds gratification in the adverse of that, and will find success. Maybe it's not long-term success, but it's temporary.
If you're chasing after whatever you think other people want to buy and you're just doing that, like, you're perpetually chasing things. You're never happy. You're never satisfied. Well, look at, like, I mean, everybody likes to beat up on the ball python people, and certainly I'm guilty of that all the time. But well, let's be honest, they make it pretty easy, and they're just the perfect example of this sort of. I think I hate the word toxic because it's so overused. I wish no one would ever use that word again. But this sort of mindset, it's like, man, just work with what you actually care about and what you're actually passionate about, and quit trying to. Otherwise, it's like this sort of Ponzi scheme sort of mentality where things are only valuable because they're new and different, and this is the thing, and then it's a perpetually moving target, and you got to be on to the next thing before the next guy. It's like, how is that the most rewarding thing? It's like, I can't imagine that. Like, if you have no real long-term deep-seated interest, also it just seems like if you're breeding morph animals, we'll say, and like that sort of rat race mentality that comes from that, if that's all you're doing, it's like you spent like the last 3 years trying to make some 4 gene combination mutant. Okay, cool. When you finally hatch the 4 gene combo mutant and you cut the egg open, because of course you did, and you look, oh my God, there it is. Your excitement is over almost immediately because you're never happy with that. You can't, oh, I'm done. Look at this. It's like, it's because it's immediately turns to, well, now I've got to make it a 5 gene mutant, don't I? It can't just be this. I got to add something else to it now. It can never just be, it just seems like the road to like never being satisfied with anything and never being happy with what you've done or what you have. It's like, I mean, I perhaps I'm lucky in that I kind of found the thing I was most interested in the world pretty early on. And here we are all these years later, still a bunch of carpet pythons. I have 42 species of python right now at this exact moment. I have almost every species you can possibly legally have. I have virtually everything you could have, but it's overwhelmingly carpet python. So it's like, you know, I have five adult and 3 subadult olive pythons, some albinos, some normal ones. I've got a bunch of olive pythons, but I have like 150 adult carpet pythons. It's like, and then I have like 2.2 of everything else basically. But I have a lot of this. But that's always been my main passion, and I dare say it probably will be till the day I die. I dabble with breeding morphs and things, but it's not, I've never bred only that. And if morphs all dried up and went away, I would be just as happy to breed wild type stuff, because that's where my heart is. That's what I find the most interesting.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Make your own lane. Like
Yeah,
you're talking about, and the hobby. It's a cyclical hobby,
if
right?
you're yeah, if your interest really is, and you are genuinely just absolutely obsessively passionate about breeding mutant ball pythons, then you should breed them. That's what you should be doing, if that's really what it is. But I think it's not for as many people. I mean, clearly, like, look what's happened of late. It's like, oh, the ball python market is super saturated, and all these people are jumping ship. And I kind of think, like, if they were really deep down in their bones were super passionate about it, they wouldn't be selling off their whole collection when the market hit the skids, would they? They're doing
Yeah.
that
No.
because probably wasn't their big passion in life. It's like maybe it was freaking day geckos. I don't know. It's like just find what it is and
Yes.
pursue
But
that.
then
You'll be so happy.
the people that remain through that, then in 10 years, how you look back and go, oh, I wish I would have kept the wild type of this and that,
Yeah, yeah.
are going to go, oh, this, whatever it is. What I think's so cool is there's got to be someone out there, and I'm not a big ball python. A lot of my business comes from ball python breeders. Ball python breeders, awesome, I love it. But it's not, it's not my particular interest. But there's got to be some dork out there just working on the craziest pastel, right? Which, as a little kid, I remember seeing that and going, "Holy crap!"
Oh yeah.
And in 5 years, someone's gonna pop out with this thing where you go, "Holy hell! I didn't think that could look like that. That's amazing." And and that's cool, and that person is the person that'll have longevity in that hobby. And because I believe it's cyclical, at some point you're going to see a dip. You're going to see a lot of that market disappear, and a lot of the people that are in there, hey, just for the financial gains,
That's
they're
been the
they're going
last
to
few
go away.
years. We're getting to the point where we're about bottoming out. A lot of people have left
Okay.
entirely, which is what needs to happen. And then it'll kind of bottom out, and then the people that are in it to win it, and they're just that's just their thing. They will stick it out, and that'll happen. And well, you're saying you breed a lot of alterna, right? Like uh, your own self, and like that's not exactly like that's a small niche of something for your own self, isn't it? Is but that's the thing you're into. Um,
I don't produce a lot. I'll say that just for the
I
record. I
was
don't
in
produce a lot,
nobody's
but
like nobody's scheming about like, man, I'm gonna make $1 million this year breeding alterna. No one's doing that. Like that's a thing that you're interested in and you're passionate about, and you're following your own heart and your own interest, and that's more genuine and that's more real, and that's what the hobby. I would like to see the hobby get back to that more, where people just pursued their own what they were super interested in, rather than this like overly commercial, got to make $1 million and this sort of like I, I don't know. I long for
well,
the
I
the
think it's
older
I
days,
think
I
it's
guess. There's a bit more
a
of
hundred
that.
percent. I 100% agree with you, but I think that it's growing pains of the hobby, where again this double-edged sword of technology and interconnection that we have, and as people start to lose space, and so the idea of having a horse and a donkey and some chickens and this and that, people lose that ability to be able to do that. And because humans have the want to have a pet, it's a human thing to want to do. These smaller animals that can be kept in a room in a reasonable size cage are going to become more popular over time, I believe. And so you're seeing this weird shift into the Budweiser of pets, where right everybody knows a gold.
Right?
Well, right. It's the same thing
Or
as
them, yeah.
a craft brewer, right? Forever, us snake dorks have been craft brewers over in the corner, being like, "Oh, we're weirdos on the outside that like these animals." And now you can talk to soccer mom Sally that doesn't know jack shit about Australian species of pythons or Australian animals. You say, "Oh, a bearded dragon," and she goes, "Oh, I know what that is,"
Yeah.
and that is unique, where we are at this weird kind of transition in the hobby. So you're gonna get the puppy mills, the this, the that.
Well,
Some of those people are going to succeed and keep going and produce thousands of animals. I mean,
well, there are a handful of reptile species that are effectively fully domesticated. Corn snakes, ball pythons, bearded dragons, leopard geckos, crested geckos. At this point, they are completely and totally they're domesticated as a pig or a horse or a cow. Um, If you look at all the hallmarks of domestication of a species, you see all of them. What do you see? You see lowered. The primary thing when you domesticate an animal is over time, you just select for the mellower, more workable animals. That's what domestication is. And so you get more and more docile animals. The mechanism that underpins that is adrenal gland output. So you're basically selecting for lower and lower adrenal gland output, resulting in mellower and mellower animals. When you do that, there is a weirdly strong correlation it's clearly observable. We don't really understand exactly why, between color and pattern mutations and adrenal gland output. The lower adrenal gland output you start seeing secondary physical characteristics change. And in mammals, that is color and coat, particularly piebald mutations start popping out at lower adrenal gland outputs. Sounds familiar? It's like, and they start popping. So look at all these lineages like leopard gecko. Look at all these things. There's all these morphs that have popped out in the domesticated line. They're all super mellow because we've domesticated them. We just did it in record time, aggressively, in much less time than you would typically see. But I talked about this in the last book I did. There's one of the longest running scientific experiments in the world is still ongoing in Russia. It started in the 1950s in the Soviet era, where even during the Soviet days, they still had a fur industry where they were like farming silver foxes in Siberia and skinning them for the fur industry. Just they didn't export furs, but there was a little bit of a fur industry for within the Soviet bloc.
Yes,
And so they was like, well, it's another canid. We want to study how humans domesticated gray wolves into dogs, and we'll start from scratch with a completely wild feral fox and see what happens. And they basically just had foxes in cages, and they just were counting how many steps, how close could you get? You have this group of, let's say, 10 foxes. How close can you get before the fox starts going crazy and is obviously getting aggressive? And the ones that let you get closer and closer, those are the ones they kept as breeders. Until eventually you could just get up all the way to all of them. And none of the ones after a few generations were like that. And then they just kept making different criteria for how you select the most docile foxes, captive bred multi-generation foxes. And long story short, it's still going on. It's been 70 something years. And now after the fall of the Soviet Union, the research is funded by selling the foxes. And they're very expensive domesticated foxes they sell to wealthy people in Moscow as pets. And they look like short dogs. What happened is they started getting weird color and coat combinations that don't occur naturally. Piebald popped up very early on in the domesticated, mellow, tame foxes. Their tails started to curl like a dog's tail instead of being straight. Their ears started to flop down as a result of lower adrenal. All they're doing is selecting for just lowered fight or flight response, adrenal gland output. They started getting flop ears and curly tails like dogs. They started to become dogs with weirdly short legs. They don't look like a normal dog, but they basically became taking dog-like attributes just purely as a result of this. And this is what we've done with these snakes, with ball pythons. Like, oh, they're super mellow. Oh, what happened with the foxes? Just like wolves, only one pair of foxes breeds one time a year, but then dogs breed twice a year, and everybody breeds. That same thing. They started hitting sexual maturity at a younger age, smaller size, and reproducing twice a year, just like dogs do. They started becoming dogs. We're doing that with all these lizards, with bearded dragons and leopard geckos. There's morphs all over the place. They're all super docile because we've selected for tameness. And the morphs came along for the ride, and they become much easier to reproduce. You know what you got to do to breed leopard geckos? Have leopard geckos. Just have a pair of leopard geckos, and they will just start laying eggs. You don't have to do anything. Ball pythons, which are seasonal breeders, have become completely non-seasonal. People in the ball python world now think that it's normal for male ball pythons to breed when they're 6 months old to 18-month-old females with no temperature or environmental manipulation whatsoever. And they think that's just normal because it's been like that as long as they've been in the hobby. It is not. That is completely an artificial thing that we have created via this sort of accidental domestication. So that's why you see these species are so dominant, because we've domesticated them. We've engineered them to be better pets, just like our ancestors did with dogs.
Yeah, no. I mean, and for the first ball python I ever bred was a wild caught animal to an albino male that I raised that female for 4 years to get her to whatever was the weight I was told to get her to, and it took every bit of those 4 years to get that animal
Yeah.
big enough to breed.
Other artifact of domestication, brain shrinkage. The more domesticated, the longer the lineage has been domesticated, the brain starts getting smaller. Because you don't need to defend for yourself. You don't really need all that brain matter, do you? Because you're like out there braving the elements on your own, are you?
Yeah.
There's evidence that you could argue that humans domesticated ourselves. When we invented agriculture, our lives got a lot easier. We started living in permanent settled communities and farming. And though our relative level of health, once we started farming, noticeably went down, our relative level of fitness and everything, agriculture was bad for our species, health wise, and our brains shrunk. If you look at, there's a period of time in Europe where you have like circa 15,000 years ago, you had Western hunter gatherer groups and you had Neolithic farmers from Anatolia that were coexisting side by side. And we have the bones of both of these groups of people. And you can see that the hunter gatherers were a couple inches taller than the farmers and had much larger brains. It's like, because you needed it. It's like you were more robustly built and were absolutely healthier. Being a farmer was not, you could feed more people more easily and your life was easier, but you were not as well nourished because you're living on a few staple crops and everything. And you see a slow decline of brain shrinkage. European hunter-gatherer brains from 20,000 years ago were about 10% larger than our brains are today. 1450, 1500 cubic centimeters, and now everybody's about 100 or 150 less than that. But we kind of domesticated ourselves, didn't we? And we became less obviously there are times of flare up, but the average level of violence that any individual commits is less than at any point in human history. Stuff still happens, but we're less violent overall than what our ancestors were. It's like, so as we've become mellower, we've selected away from overtly aggression, which also is a sign of your adrenal gland output. We've selected it because if you're super aggressive, you don't get along in a settled society as well. So we have domesticated ourselves and our brain shrunk.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting how that works out. And again, as we start to wind down here, I want to be cognizant of your time tonight and not keep you. And I think that we could talk for hours here and keep one question I kind of like to ask and just kind of get your opinion. And then, well, hopefully we get to do this again in the future. I think we only about got up to your first snake show and picking carpet pythons. So there's many more things to discuss
right.
there.
Hit me with it. Let's do it.
Where do you see the hobby going in the future, and kind of from what you've seen and where you see it going?
There are some growing pains now with like the contraction of certain market sectors, which were overrepresented. In my area of expertise, things like ball pythons, reticulated pythons, and to a lesser extent boa constrictors are kind of a bit of contraction. But what happened with all of those things is that they became entirely dominated by morph breeding, and that creates an unsustainable market bubble. I think that what I want to see happen, and I think I see signs that we're headed that way, is that, and what I try to impress upon people is what I'd like to see is more balance in the hobby. It's not that breeding for mutant morph stuff is bad. It's not bad. I have all that stuff too. It's that when it's the only thing that matters is when it becomes a problem. It's like when you have lost any and all appreciation for what the species you tell everybody you love so much is supposed to look like, you don't really care about ball pythons anymore. You care about mutations is what you care about. You don't care about this species. It's just the canvas on which you can pile these mutations. I think that gets a bit unhealthy sort of mindset. I think that there's a slow rise in interest in wild type animals, wild type specimens. I get people ask me all the time for that kind of stuff. And so I'm starting to see an uptick in interest in that stuff. It's not that people don't want an albino Darwin carpet python, but it's easier to sell a really nice wild type Darwin carpet python than the albino. And there's this people, the attention is people are starting to take another look at, these things are naturally beautiful animals. All these reptiles are, and there's nothing wrong with their natural phenotype. That's what they're supposed to look like by and large. And I think that we're going to get to a point where you'll see a greater appreciation for that. And I think that is a good and healthy thing and what the hobby desperately needs. It doesn't mean that more stuff's going to go away, because it's not. And it doesn't need to, and it probably shouldn't. But I think we're going to get to a bit more balanced. I think you're going to see so much of the hobby has been morph breeding of a couple of species to the point of just an absurd level of overreduction. I think you're going to see less of those species and more of some of the other things that are around, and maybe more emphasis on wild types and natural things as well. And I think that the pendulum of public interest, and this started in the early 2000s when Peter Call put the first piebald ball pythons up for $25,000 a piece, and actually people paid it. That started this whole insanity. I think people are waking up to the reality that they're not going to be able to have 5 snakes and produce 3 clutches and quit their job. That is not a thing that's realistically going to happen. And so the pendulum is swinging back towards more balanced down in the middle, where you can appreciate that and you can pursue that, but there's this other stuff is cool too. And maybe you have more diversity in your collection and your hobby, less specialization, and a greater overall appreciation of natural forms. I mean, some of this stuff, like look at all the, to bring it back to like colubrids, like, and I was guilty of overlooking like North American colubrids because I started out with pythons. And back when I got started, the general progression is you start out with like colubrids, corn snakes, king snakes, milk snakes, and you kind of graduated up and you moved up into pythons. That was like a promotion or something. I don't know. I kind of started out with pythons and I kind of skipped all that stuff. And in my younger and more ignorant days, I probably looked down on that stuff. It's like, who cares about that? That's from North America, so it can't be that cool. But really, if you're being totally honest and just looking objectively at all the snakes of the world, you'd be hard pressed to find a more beautiful snake than a black and white California king snake. What on earth is more visually just like wow than a black and white cow king? And they're not all over the place, but they're around in the wild. You can go find them. Like, that is a unbelievably beautiful animal. And I think, we need to get back to our roots and appreciating that kind of stuff more, and not only appreciating if it's an albino. And I see ample signs, what I see people talk about, what I have people ask me about, what I produce, that what sells out and when it sells and how fast that goes. Like, okay, well, like this year I had 5 albino Darwin carpets and I had 9 wild type Darwin carpets that were not even het for albino, just absolutely unrelated to the albino lineage, het for absolutely nothing, classic wild type, just look like you pluck them out of a tree. They're so natural looking. And I had twice as many of them, and they're the same price as the albinos. And I sold all 9 of the normals for the same price as the albinos. I still have 1 albino left. Even though I started with twice as many normals at the same price point, the normal sold twice as fast.
Yeah.
And
well, like, I think that gets back to that fundamental, that love that you started with when we first started talking about as a young man, and the dedication and the focus to make it happen. Do what you love and follow that, and you end up being the trendsetter over time, and very, very cool.
Yeah, you follow your own heart, follow what you're interested. I mean, don't quit listening to people trying to tell you what you should be doing. Like, if you want to breed Cuban anoles, then breed Cuban anoles. I don't know. That's like whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it is. If that's the thing that you are, just every time you look at it, you're like, damn, that's cool. There's those things that you just like, you have in your collection and you just stare at sometimes at how awesome this is. Like, it's like, that's what you should be doing. If whatever captures your imagination and your passion for the hobby, pursue that. If everybody did that, our hobby would be so much better. I think there's some reason for optimism that, as these other areas that are massively overproduced, as what's happening is a lot of those people that got in to that stuff have gotten out of the hobby entirely. It's like, what? I'm not going to get rich doing this. And they kind of get out. But some of those people that got in for even for those reasons kind of got bit by the reptile bug, didn't they? And they're become legitimate herpers. And now that maybe they're realizing, well, maybe I'm not going to get rich doing this, but look at all this other awesome stuff. And so some of those people, they might have got in and sort of jumping on a bandwagon, but there's gonna be a bunch of them that are gonna stick around, and they might, and they will. and they will discover this other stuff and this wider, universe of reptiles and amphibians. And there's just so many amazing, cool things. You could never have all of the things that are cool. You could never work with all of it. We have an absolute embarrassment, an abundance of riches. There's so many cool things that you can just get and work with. And I think that's, yeah, there's no reason. I don't know how anybody could ever get bored in this hobby.
Yes, sir. Yeah. No, and I agree with you, and I think I also see a bright future for the hobby, and I concur with a lot of the points you made. And again, I hope we do get to do this in the future. I think we could, we'll try to get through maybe college next time or wherever.
College,
and,
I got a little bit. We can talk a little bit longer. Like
okay.
I'm ahead of the curve now. See.
Okay. Well, you let me know if you got a run or anything.
We can probably go for another 20, maybe even 30 if I'm lucky. But,
all right. Well,
we'll go a little bit longer, but
excellent. If I see you through a
college,
shoe get thrown at your head. Well, so last where we kind of tangent off there was talking about your first snake show, going in picking carpets, and that kind of being fundamental in your life path and where you went. What are some of the other kind of key points that you feel that you hit where you go, these were, it could be people you met, it could be projects you did, shooting in the dark here, trying to, again, squeeze as much in.
A lot of this was, again, me just reading a lot and consuming as much literature as I could. And, but I did have like my friendship with Ryan Young, is probably pretty critical to my success also. In that, when you have a good friend that's into the same thing you're in. I mean, I've had this one dude who for almost 30 years, I've had to talk to all the time, bouncing ideas back and forth off of, who's into the same sort of things and theories and different hypotheses and all this stuff. And I mean, I remember, and it pushes you to be better at what you're doing because you see what he's doing and vice versa. So you have this not a competition, although now there is definitely a competition, but I'll talk about that later. But you kind of push each other to be better at this. I remember one time he was, I think Ryan was like 20 years old, and he had this little, crappy apartment. And I went over there, and he had like this cage for a green tree python he had built out of like 3/4 inch white melamine, pretty common material. But he got like the edge banding, so it's all the edges were all nice and banded, nice and the ventilation was like he used gable vents from a house, the round ones, and the hole saw, and they were so nice and professional looking. And he had sliding glass doors. He had found where you could buy by the foot sliding glass door bypass channel and made sliding glass doors. I was so insanely jealous of that. I went home and immediately started making all new cages. I'm sitting here with a hinge door like some sort of a peasant. What is but he set a new high bar for like caging standards. Like, oh man, and I went home, I just pounded out a whole bunch of them, redid all my cages and everything basically in the same sort of style, because it was like this was so much better and more professional looking than what I was doing. It made me raise what I was doing to get onto that level. And this sort of tit for tat, I think, has pushed both of us to be pretty successful at this. But I think that's been a big, it took me a long time to realize that was a thing. And then now, over these many, 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 many years of breeding pythons, both of us, Ryan's he's a nerd too, but he kind of quietly set a goal for himself and didn't really tell me or anybody else for the longest time. And he wanted to be the person that had bred the most species of python in all of history. Breed more species of python than anybody had ever bred in captivity. I'm like, well, that seems like a lofty goal. And he did it. Like, he's like, no one on earth who's ever lived has bred more species of python than him. And he had a whole spreadsheet keeping track of who had bred what species. And I am like in third place in the all-time standings for breeding the most species of all time. I need to pass VPI, and then I'm right behind him. He's like 7 ahead of me. It's like, so I'm like, all right, it's on now. Like, I got all this stuff. Now we're like actively trying to do this now. Like, oh my God. I'm trying to breed all 3 short-tail python species and 2 of the retic species this year, and berms. I'm trying to add I could conceivably add 6 or 7 this year, and move into second place in the all-time standings. But I'm thinking what's wrong with healthy competition? I think it's honorable enough goal to try to breed the most species of python in captivity, that's not a bad thing, is it? Right?
Not at all. And
I
I
think.
think it's so cool the idea of, a rivalry between friends,
Oh,
and where that pushes you, that'll push you harder than anything that could possibly do is trying to beat your buddy.
oh, we
I
laugh
can
at it all
relate
the
with
time.
that.
He's got a head start on me because I didn't know I was in a competition with him for a long time. But like he had some low hanging fruit, easy species that he bred a long time ago that I just never was really into. And he's bred some hard ones that I've not bred, but I bred some stuff he's not bred. But overall, he's got a few. He's ahead of me by a few there, so I got some catch up to. I remember we finally decided, all right, this is officially a contest now, and like we're at the same expo. We're both looking for baby Burmese pythons because neither of us have bred Burms. Trying to like get some Burms, like to do this. Yeah, it's but I don't know. Competition pushes you to. I think I personally work better if I have a clearly stated goal in mind that I need to try to achieve. And I guess when I look around like at where I'm at career wise now, it's, what's that goal? What are my goals now? My goals now are not going to be the same goals I had 10, 15, or 20 years ago. It's like, well, I've done a bunch of these other things. It's like, what is there left to do? There's always something left to do. So now I want to find all 4 species of green tree python in the wild. That's a goal now. I found 2 down, 2 to go. It's like, so going to these, going to some of these far flung places like New Guinea and finding pythons in the wild that's the thing, now I do a lot more of
Yes, sir.
that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. It's, you only live once and you don't even know how long you're here. It could all be over in a blink of an eye. You don't even know. I might not make it to the end of this conversation. You never really know. No one knows how long they have. And when you get older, you realize just how finite life is and how quickly that can be snatched away from you. It's you get me anyway. I'm like, that is, I mean, in a very real sense, the certainty of death is the only thing is what gives life meaning, is because it's finite. And
Exactly.
it's more finite than younger people realize. But I'm getting old and I very much realize it. I lose friends periodically and at my age, and so I look at like what I want to do with the rest of the time I have, and I have a lot of stuff I want to do still. So I never get busy, doing it. It's like now I'm on this kick. I want to go back to the most difficult places in the world to travel to, I guess, while I'm still physically able to do that. So I might be going back to New Guinea or extreme eastern Indonesia, some of these remote places and stuff in just a short period of time. Don't know yet. Still trying to see if I can get the logistics of that together.
Very
But
cool.
it's important to do those things while you can do them. So
Yes, sir.
that's
100%. And it's, that's what's so cool about the reptile hobby, right? Is it is if you are truly into it, and everybody's different, but if you are truly into it, it ends up with you being a naturalist and someone that
yeah.
is interested in every aspect of it, to what's going on with the moon, what's going on with the weather, why are the rocks like this, what plants are here, what
I,
animals eat those plants.
I've had it.
It
Yeah, absolutely. There've been a few just moments I've had traveling around the world and everything, and where you just have to stop and just take it in for a moment. It's like, wow. Like, I remember I was in like, Ryan was there too, and we went to Western Australia, and we were trying to find a Pilbara olive python, which is a really rare olive python species, and they don't really find them crossing the road. You got to like beat the bush in remote areas. They're very difficult to find. And we had heard that someone had found one at a place called Python Pool, which is a permanent water hole in the middle of the desert. And usually, if you go to a place with snake in the title, you're not finding anything. Python Pool or Snake Creek, you're not finding anything. It's like, but we went to Python Pool anyway, and it's not on the way to anywhere. It's the absolute middle of nowhere. And there's like a dirt little parking lot, little area, dirt area, and there's like a little tiny, very rudimentary trail that takes you hike back into this kind of, it looks like a rock amphitheater sort of natural feature with a permanent spring of cool water at the bottom of it. And we're just sitting by our cars, got a cooler out, drinking something cold, and it's 1,000,000 degrees in Western Australia, and you are so far from civilization that there is zero light pollution. and you can see the entire spiral arm of the Milky Way galaxy going up at like a 45-degree angle. And you're just like, wow, this is just like one of those. And there is, as far as the eye can see, there is not a single sign that human beings have ever walked the earth. There are no roads, there are no power lines, there is nothing. It's like, this is what this has always looked like. Like, it's just a truly wild, untouched place. And it's just, I'm just like, I'm not a spiritual guy, but it was like, wow, you just had to really, it's one of those moments I'll remember the rest of my life. And then we started walking in on the trail and found the damn olive python. But in the first 5 seconds, it was one just coiled up at the edge of the water, just like sitting like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? A friend of mine
Yes.
started screaming. He walked, there was like a praying mantis that was in the path, and there's four of us, and three of us were all like, or four of us were all like looking at this praying mantis. And one of my friends, Simon, he went onto the pool ahead of us, and he just starts screaming at the top of his lungs that there's a python. Just starts screaming, and we're just like, shut up, thinking he's just totally full of shit. There's no way. It's like,
Yeah.
and he kept screaming, like, is he serious? Like, and we kind of hustled over there, like, oh crap, like it was imminently just going to slither into the water and disappear. It's like, oh, it's like just one of those moments you'll just remember that night forever. I had another one of those, last year in March, I went to eastern, Bird's Head Peninsula in New Guinea and the islands off the coast of there and stuff. And you're just like, you just have to take a minute. I'm like sitting in a hammock in this hut that's on bamboo stilts that are pounded into a live coral reef right at the edge of Waigeo Island. And I'm looking across the strait at Batanta Island, where the blue tree monitors come from, which we also went to and found blue tree monitors. And I'm just watching, and there's like dolphins going through this strait. It was almost like picturesque. Like, I can't believe I'm literally here. It took me 4 days of traveling to get there, but I'm just like, you just have to soak it all up. And like, but that it's a reptile thing. Like, I would have never known this place existed had it not been for an interest in reptiles and the road that I took, and that led me to these sort of like, I don't know, awe-inspiring moments. And we all need some of those in our lives, I think.
Yeah. I think that there's I think that you've probably felt this feeling, and I'd be curious to hear your breakdown on it. But in those moments where you're in there and you're there and you're looking at that thing, right? The moment for you and the realization that it is finite.
Yeah.
And you are trying, I don't know about you, but I've been there in those moments. And I find myself trying to look at the thing that I'm looking at and soak it in a way that is so different, where I realize this moment is finite, and
Yeah.
to try to hold it. And I'm going like, what? Oh, think about the smell, think about the sound, think about everything. Just, and I think that some people might not experience that in life.
The harder it is, I think the more it feels earned and the better it is. Like, if it was easy, everyone would do it.
100%. Yes,
I
sir.
remember on that same trip to New Guinea, I don't know if anybody knows where Salawati Island is. It's the tip of the Bird's Head Peninsula of New Guinea, but technically there's a tiny water channel that makes it an island, but you could skip a rock across it. It's the mainland, basically. And we're on the edge of this river. We'd hike back into the rainforest on the edge of this small river and caught it was just floating down the river. I don't know what it was trying to do, but it was like being swept down by the current. A Papuan small-eyed snake, an ika, which is the most dangerous snake in New Guinea. It's responsible for more snakebite fatalities than any other snake in New Guinea. It's a member of the elapid family. Mostly small-eyed snakes are very small. They're little tiny things, little tiny snakes with kind of blunted heads and stuff. They're kind of distinctive looking. And they're really venomous, but they're really small. But the New Guinea small-eyed snake is huge. It's like a 5.5-foot monster. Also, they're piebald white with like a dark head and some sprinkle of pattern, but they're mostly white. So it's like a
Huh.
5.5-foot white, enormous, supersized, small-eyed snake that kills more people in New Guinea than anything.
Okay.
And we caught it, of course. And I'm like thinking, like, and yeah, I had to pick it up. I mean, it's like I was like, I'll regret this the rest of my life if I don't. And your heart's just pounding because I could die at any moment, and I am nowhere near medical. I'll die. This will be my death of me. And I've got this snake with a stick, and you kind of hold it up, and just like your heart's pounding, and just that thought that like, this is a moment I will never forget and will never be able to repeat ever again. Just this few brief moments of this interaction and everything in this place, doing this with these people, is a once in a lifetime thing and it'll never be repeated. And you really try to have to let that soak in. It's like, man, I'm literally in freaking New Guinea holding a Papuan small-eyed snake. Like, what? Like, this is the craziest thing. But, I'll remember that till for the rest of my life. I'll not forget that. Like that. And I
Yes,
think
sir.
that, that's living. Like, I guess in my book, like, that's not what everybody wants to do, obviously, but it's like that's the kind of experiences, whatever that is, that people need to, or should ideally probably, like, find out the thing that will give them that level of excitement, and that they're just, and just and just experience life at that level. So many people, I think, they go through their whole lives and they don't ever do anything like that. They never get out of their comfort zone. They never get, and really, really push their own personal boundaries and limits and really live, like, to get to that point. My body, this was like a day 7 of that trip where you're sleeping outside in a hammock tent suspended in 2 trees above a tidal mangrove swamp, where it's basically just a mosquito breeding ground of just like, it just covered, every inch of my body is covered in insect bites. Uh, Also, no, a handful of leeches and stuff get you. It's like, it's every bit as bad as you think it is for that sort of thing. But to be there and suffer the hardships of it and the torrential rains you get caught in, and just like but to do it, and like, man, you feel like I did a thing like that. I don't know anybody else has ever done this or had this experience, and you just feel like you've really lived. And I wish more
Yes.
people would do that sort of thing, and really, you almost have to do it to get it. You know what I mean? Like, to
The
like,
the best moments in my life were the worst times in my life.
makes the best
Where
stories. The best
yes,
stories the best stories that you tell over and over again, and you smile every time you tell, it's when everything went wrong. It's not when
yes,
everything went according to plan. That's not a good story. It's when everything went to hell. That's the best stories. Everything falls apart. Everything that can go wrong does. That's what makes the best stories.
yes.
Somebody once
And
said,
that's the reason why we exist still to
yes,
this day, is that weird little human trait
yeah,
that we miss, that every once in a while we get to unlock, and our hobby, the thing that we find passion in, we're able to find that in, and it is so unique.
go to the craziest place, do the crazy thing, eat the crazy food, whatever it is. It's like somebody once said, no good story ever started with a salad. That's true. Like, I think I've been to 17 countries now, and whatever the weirdest thing people eat in that country, I find it and eat it. It doesn't matter whether it's putrid, rancid, fermented shark meat in Iceland, or, you know, whatever. I've eaten, yeah, I've eaten it because, yeah, it's probably gross too, but it doesn't matter. It's like, I'm gonna experience this because it's probably the only chance I'm ever gonna have to do this or have this experience. I
Yes,
do not want to. I do not want to look back at my life when it's all over, if I am afforded the opportunity to do that, and regret the things that I did not do, the adventures I did not take, the crazy things I did not eat because I played it safe. Nobody ever has written on their tombstone, wish I would have played it safe. Nobody ever, you don't lament the things, you lament the things you didn't do, the adventures you never had, the chances you did not take. That's what you'll regret, not the stuff you did. Yeah, it's like, I'm gonna go for it, and if I fall flat on my face, then so be it. But I will go down knowing that I went for it. And I think that is, I don't know. I think more people would have more fulfilled lives if they would embrace a little bit more of that, and just
yes, sir.
just go for it, whatever it is. Like, I breed pythons for a living. My life is awesome. Do you know how many
Yeah.
people told me and encouraged me, you should quit your job and breed pythons full time? Yeah, zero people. Zero people. 100% of people told me that will never work.
Yeah.
That was it. Other than Ryan, who also turned pro around the same time, as far as breeding pythons. So it's like breeding snakes for a living with no other means of support. But yeah, it's, and that willingness to fail. I'm going to try this because if I don't give this a try, I will regret never trying. And for me, it worked. It worked out. So far, it continues to work out. We'll see what tomorrow holds, but up till now, for the last 2 decades, it's worked out. And it's made all the difference. Like, to have the job, your dream job is what you were. I was paying a bunch of money to do this. Now I get paid money to do this. Like, I've turned my most my biggest passion in life into my career, and I couldn't be happier about that. Other than on rodent cleaning day, which sucks. But beyond that, it's it's the best job ever. Like I don't know, like, but that kind of stuff only can happen for you if you're willing to give it a shot and just go for it. Think it out, plan it out, think it through, be a realist, don't be crazy. But I mean, it's like, but I think the saddest thing are all the people who, everybody has hopes and dreams, everybody has things they want to do, they want to see, they want to accomplish, and so few people ever even try. Most people never even attempt to try to live out their dreams, whatever those dreams are, however modest. Most people never even, not only do they not achieve their dreams, they never even try. And that's just like, I'm going to try. I might well fail. I can accept failure if I try and I fail. That is acceptable. But to not try is not acceptable. You know, I
Yes,
don't,
sir.
and that's made all the difference in my life. That's why I get to do what I do now, because I wasn't afraid to just, to, and I didn't just quit my day job to turn pro breeding snakes on a whim. Like, I planned it out so precisely as to my last day working at my last normal person job was December 31st. I planned it out for 2 years in advance. I bought additional animals that I was not necessarily in the market to buy, to try to like figure out what I would need at what price point to generate enough money to do this for a living. I invested in infrastructure while I was still breeding a lot of snakes, but also had a day job and everything, caging, all the stuff I thought I would need. I saved up kind of an oh shit fund for, you know, bad times in case your eggs went bad or what have you and everything. I did everything I could to try to, you know, do this, but then eventually there is that point where you have to step off and hope it works and actually do it. And I did. I mean, um, and that willingness to try, to put your foot out into the unknown, whether that's a trip somewhere or a career change or whatever, that you've got to be willing to, if you want to have a happy, fulfilled life, you really, and really, in my, what I consider a happy and fulfilled life, I guess there are those people that might be, have different ideas on that, but I think it's, you've got to be willing to risk it. Uh, a little, at least a calculated risk. It's like, if nothing is ventured, nothing is gained. You're not, you know, and I don't want an ordinary life. I don't want an average life. I get one life. This is just it. And it's, statistically, it's at least 2/3 the way over for me, just mathematically. It's, I have far more years behind me than I have in front of me, and I don't want to leave anything left on the field. Like, I do not want to look back at somebody who played it safe and who just never went for it. I want to go all the way to the end as hard as I can and live it to the absolute best of my ability. And everybody's interest will be different, and what that means will be different to everybody. But I think everybody should quit acting like you're got forever, because you don't. Recognize your own mortality, that your time is finite and shorter than you realize, probably. Get busy doing the things, whatever you find important in your life, do those things. Don't wait, don't put it off, do those things. You know, go those places, do those things, talk to those people, you know, whatever it is, do it.
Yeah.
There's a fire under your ass to do it, because there should be.
Yes. Yeah, and it's a unique position to be in, and you've put the effort in, and the character of who you are led you to be able to do that. And for the person that hears that message and that opens up their mind to those possibilities, that'll be a powerful moment, even if it only hits the one person that does it. That's valuable information there.
Yeah, but
Well, thank you.
if it reaches one person, it could potentially, the difference that would make, could make in their lives, if they decided like to just go for it. It's like
Yes.
you'll you'll figure it out. Big
Yes.
problems in life, like, how am I going to go, how can I do this? That's a big problem. It's like, well, big problems are usually just a composite. Big problems are typically just a series of smaller problems. The totality of all the 5 or 6 small problems add up to be a big problem. But if you break the big problem into its component parts and you solve each one of these 5 smaller problems independently, eventually you figure it out and you can get it done and you do it. And it's just, don't be intimidated by the immensity of the problem if you really sit down and think about things. You can be surprised. People be surprised what they can figure out, what they can pull
Write
off.
it down one step at a
Yes.
time. Usually the answer to the question in your head, the one that you don't want to do, but it's the one that prevails, is normally the right answer, and no one telling you any different is going to change it. You got to do what you know you got to do. Shut up and do it.
I started traveling internationally like 30 years ago. So I was probably 25, or so in there, 24, 25. And first a big international trip, I went to Italy for a couple of weeks. And I'm like, all right, what do I got to do to make this happen? It's like, well, that's a giant problem. I can't go to Italy. How am I going to do that? It's like, I don't have the time off of work. That was a problem. Who's going to take care of my animals while I'm gone? That's a problem. Also, I don't have any money. That was a big problem. So it's like, but each one, the totality of all the problems, most people would look at like, yeah, you're not going to Italy. You're not doing it. But it's like, okay, well, if you're flexible with when you go, you can cut the money back by where you stay and when you fly. Time of year, low season, kind of get those tickets cheaper. And you solve these things one at a time. And I went on that trip. And I've been all over the world since then. But every time it's like, all right, logistically, what do I got to do to make this happen? How do I make this work? And just solve, just like algebra, just keep solving for X over and over and over. Eventually you'll figure out what's the combination of things I need to do to get to the goal, the finish line here. And don't be intimidated by the totality of the seeming complexity of the problem. Just break it down and solve it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, excellent. Well, very good. I've appreciated my conversation with you tonight. I've had a wonderful time speaking to you, and I still think hopefully again we do it again in the future.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
It's good being here.
Thank you.
Let me zoom out on you here. Okay, you got a message for the time capsule?
Yeah, and it's simply this. My prediction for you is that even though you'll forget all about this in some way consciously, next summer at about this time, you'll remember to return.